Who are a few of the worst people we need to kick out of society? Such as this guy who carved his and his girlfriend's name onto the Colosseum. Or maybe it's this couple caught on live stream. Let's get right to it and start with number 6, the name carver. Ivan Dimitrov, a fitness instructor from Bristol, UK, made pretty much everyone hate him after a video surfaced online showing him carving Ivan plus Haley 23 into the walls of Rome's nearly 2,000-year-old Colosseum. Captured by an American tourist, Ryan Lutz, the video quickly went viral, leading to a widespread outrage. Admit it, when you first heard a tourist vandalize the Colosseum, you automatically assumed the tourist was American, right? Yeah, we did too. Dimitrov, also known as Ivan Hawkins, and his girlfriend Haley Bracey, a sports nutritionist, were on a 3-week European tour when the incident occurred. After the video posted by Lutz went viral, Italian Carabinieri, one of Italy's main law enforcement agencies, used hotel records and CCTV to track Dimitrov and Bracey to Bulgaria while they were still on their vacation. Once authorities caught up to Dimitrov, he expressed his remorse and apologized for the damage, somehow claiming he hadn't realized the historical significance of the Colosseum. Back in Rome, the Colosseum Park Authority pressed charges, and the Italian culture minister condemned the act, calling it an insult to global heritage. Dimitrov now faces a potential fine of up to 15,000 euros and a jail term between 2 to 5 years. His trial is expected to commence early in 2025, where he'll have the opportunity to formally apologize in court. In a separate attempt at damage control, Dimitrov also penned an apology to the mayor of Rome, still claiming his ignorance about the beloved monument's status. His lawyer described him as a typical foreign tourist, unaware of the severity of such actions in Italy. But the whole excuse has to be a lie, right? Has he really not seen Gladiator? Number 5. Swipe left. Stuart Lucas Murray, a Santa Monica resident, got himself wrapped up in a legal battle after suing a group of women he met through dating apps. Murray claimed that these women defamed him by discussing his behavior in a private Facebook group called Are We Dating the Same Guy, Los Angeles, a platform women use to share their negative dating experiences. Despite his accusations, which included a claim of a large-scale conspiracy against him, the Los Angeles Superior Court dismissed his lawsuit against one defendant, Vanessa Valdez, after she filed an anti-SLAPP motion, arguing that the suit was a means to silence criticism. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation and refers to lawsuits that are often filed against critics or opponents with the intention to intimidate, censor, and silence them by burdening them with the cost of legal defense until they abandon their criticism or opposition. These suits typically lack substantial legal merit, but are used to pressure the defendants into settling out of fear of high legal costs. An anti-SLAPP motion seeks to dismiss lawsuits aimed at silencing lawful speech on public issues. The incident began when Murray became a topic of discussion in the group after several women shared stories of their interactions with him. These ranged from unwanted follow-ups at a Beverly Hills hotel bar to receiving unprovoked threats of lawsuits. So Murray responded to these allegations with a lawsuit, demanding $2.6 million in damages for defamation and emotional distress. However, the court found no evidence of a conspiracy or defamation. As the legal battles raged, more than 50 women were named in Murray's lawsuits, but the legal outlook seemed bleak for him. Legal experts explained that defamation suits like his were difficult to prove and often didn't succeed because the statements made by the women were either true or subjective opinions protected by free speech. A GoFundMe campaign was started to cover the legal expenses of the defendants, emphasizing the financial and emotional toll of the lawsuit on them. This campaign highlighted the broader implications of using the legal system to intimidate and silence individuals, an issue that resonates with many beyond just the parties involved. As the case unfolded, it became a clear example of the challenges and risks associated with speaking out on social media platforms, especially in matters involving personal safety and reputation. The outcome of the anti-SLAPP motion against Valdez was a significant setback for Murray, potentially setting a precedent for the dismissal of similar claims against other defendants. correspondence. With all his unprovoked legal threats, this guy sounds like that kid you knew when you were 8 whose parent was a cop and they always said they were going to get their parent to arrest you or something, right? Wah, I'm gonna sue you if you don't stop. Wah. Hopefully this guy doesn't try to sue us too for reporting on his lawsuits. Number 4, the AEK, another entitled Karen. Julia Regine Moorhead got into a heated altercation with Florida police at an upscale hotel in West Palm Beach. The incident, which erupted after hotel staff requested police intervention due to Moorhead's drunken behavior in their lobby, where they weren't even sure if she was a guest. Moorhead, as seen through body cam footage, was visibly intoxicated and clutching a Louis Vuitton purse, resisted efforts by police to escort her from the property, escalating to physical altercations. The drama began when Moorhead, outside the hotel, was approached by officers asking if she had been enjoying herself a little too much, to which she responded aggressively. So the police tried to calm the situation, but were met with further resistance as Moorhead stormed back into the hotel. Despite being repeatedly told she was trespassing, Moorhead demanded explanations and insulted the officers, threatening to report them. But the confrontation peaked when Moorhead threw herself to the ground like a 5-year-old having a tantrum, preventing the police's efforts to remove her from the premises. The situation escalated further when Moorhead then struck an officer. At this point, the police had to physically restrain her, leading to a prolonged struggle that included her thrashing about, yelling profanities. Despite her boyfriend's late appearance and plea for gentle handling, the police explained their forceful response was due to Moorhead acting like an aggressive maniac. Moorhead was eventually subdued and placed in the police vehicle, continuing to resist by kicking and screaming. Charged with battery of an emergency responder, resisting arrest, trespass, criminal damage, and disorderly intoxication, Moorhead pleaded not guilty. In our opinion, drunk, entitled Karens are probably the worst type of Karen to deal with. It's like alcohol takes the entitlement and Karen rage to another level. She seems like the type who would have a made-up gluten sensitivity too. Number 3, Dine and Dasher Tour. In South Wales in the UK, an unnamed couple, who looked to be in their 40s or 50s, were arrested for a series of dine and dash incidents that have plagued local restaurants. The duo reportedly enjoyed lavish meals, typically featuring steaks at various restaurants, and then fled without paying the bills. The damages caused to these struggling businesses were significant, with incidents reported across several locations. Their latest escapade ended abruptly after police arrested the couple on charges of fraud and theft and were detained for questioning. Amidst their legal troubles, the couple's rented home was targeted one evening when masked people in black balaclavas smashed their front windows. Neighbors mistook the loud noises for gunfire and promptly alerted the police. The aftermath of their actions affected not just restaurants, but other businesses too. Phil Carey, a local blinds company owner, faced a similar deceit when the woman promised to pay an $850 bill by bank transfer after he serviced their house but never followed through. This type of dishonesty wasn't new to the couple either. During a visit to the Yard Pizzeria, a woman from the group tried to settle a $151 tab with a credit card that was declined multiple times. She then left under the pretense of withdrawing cash, but never returned. Similarly, the Bella Ciao Italian restaurant was hit when the couple, dining with a large group, left behind a $329 bill. Attempts to pay were thwarted when the woman's card was declined and she disappeared after claiming she had to grab another card. Restaurant owners have been vocal about their frustrations, with many taking to social media to share CCTV images and seek public assistance in identifying the culprits. These posts often showed the brazen and calculated nature of the couple's dining strategies, which left businesses both irate and out of pocket. In response to the ongoing investigation, the police have been piecing together the extent of the couple's deceit, although they have yet to determine if the vandalism at their home was directly connected to their dine and dash scheme. We're not sure how the two aren't related. It seems a little too coincidental. As the couple faces potential jail time, the community and effective business owners continue to grapple with the fallout, hoping for justice and restitution. To anyone working in the restaurant industry, how do you guys deal with dine and dashers? Number 2, the confused officer. Akira Jones, a former rookie corrections officer from Memphis, Tennessee, got herself put behind bars for allegedly engaging in an inappropriate relationship with an inmate. After being on the job for less than a year, Jones was arrested after an internal investigation was sparked by a complaint about some inappropriate behavior. This led to Jones being on leave and facing a felony charge for inappropriate contact with prisoners. The complaint claimed that Jones had relations with an inmate at the jail where male inmates are typically housed. The details of their relationship remain under wraps, but the sheriff's office has taken a firm stand against any fraternization between staff and inmates. Jones's arrest led to her being held on a $5,000 bond, and the investigation eventually reached a grand jury, resulting in her indictment. As she remained in jail, Sheriff Floyd Bonner Jr. emphasized the sheriff's office's commitment to maintaining ethical standards and public trust, underscoring their zero-tolerance policy towards misconduct by personnel. Maybe Akira got confused about what cell mate means. It's not about mating in a cell. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here to find out how this girl scammed millions simply by scaring her psychic clients. Number 1. Caught on live stream. Alyssa Jordana, a former writer and personality for The Howard Stern Show, found herself in the throes of a legal and personal crisis following a violent altercation with her boyfriend, Bahram Alipour, during a live stream. The incident, captured while they were driving, spiraled out of control after a couple's counseling session. It culminated in Jordana's arrest for felony battery. Alipour, the son of a wealthy Beverly Hills businessman, and Jordana were both seen striking each other on camera, with accusations of infidelity and financial deceit throwing fuel on the fire. Jordana, whose real name is Elisa Ann Schwartz, claimed the confrontation began when she discovered text and Venmo transactions to other women on Alipour's phone, hinting at his unfaithfulness. This discovery led to a physical confrontation during the live stream where Jordana slapped Alipour multiple times as she accused him of cheating. Alipour retaliated, leading to Jordana alleging he suffocated her and pulled her hair, with the stream capturing her hair appearing visibly shorter on one side afterwards. Following her arrest, Jordana expressed remorse for her actions and the negative portrayal of her character during the live stream. She was issued a no-contact order prohibiting any interaction with Alipour and faced a felony charge in a Florida court. Jordana and her attorney, Brian Bieber, are set to argue that she was the victim, citing the violent behavior from Alipour. Jordana emphasized the severity of Alipour's actions, explaining that had she not been recording, the consequences could have been far worse. The police, however, based their decision on the visible injuries to Alipour and the content of the live stream. As Jordana prepares for her court appearance, she vowed to reevaluate her relationships and work towards fostering connections that are beneficial and positive, underscoring this period as the most challenging time of her life. If you ask us, they're both in the wrong. No doubt, Jordana had no excuse for putting hands on Alipour. Infidelity isn't an excuse. And vice versa for Alipour. He didn't need to put hands on her either. What are some of the most creative scams out there? Let's get right to it and get started with number 6. Wings, wings, wings. Vera Liddell was accused of stealing over $1.5 million worth of chicken wings for a school district. The district doesn't even allow chicken wings in the first place because of the hazards of having bones in the wings. In the middle of 2020, Liddell started working as the director of food services for the Harvey, Illinois school district. As director of food services, Liddell was the only one with the authority to order food that would be cooked at the schools. But Liddell had other things she planned to do with her power, and it involved chicken. She made hundreds of unauthorized orders, including an order of 11,000 cases of chicken wings. What she was planning to do with that many cases of wings is anyone's guess, but she most likely was just selling the chicken to some random unsuspecting vendors. Unless she loved wings that much. A mid-year internal audit found that Liddell had been ordering unauthorized items that were never served to students for over a year. The review also discovered that Liddell had ordered so much unauthorized food that the school was now $300,000 over budget, despite being just halfway through the school year. Liddell had ordered so much food that the suppliers who supplied the food even knew her by name. She was so chummy with them that she usually used the school van to pick up and transport the unauthorized food items herself. It was a good scam, until she ordered too many wings and was caught. Today, Liddell faces a charge of felony theft and continuing a financial crimes enterprise. Those wings stopped. Number 5. Jesus Instructions. John Michael Haskew made $7 billion in fraudulent online payments, and when he was caught, he had an interesting explanation for the police. He argued that he had done it because Jesus created wealth for him. Obviously. The officers who interrogated him probably rolled their eyes when they heard Haskew's excuse, but John stood by it throughout. According to him, he was merely accessing the fantastic heavenly bounties that Jesus had provided for him. That was like practically the entire second half of the New Testament, where Jesus was just making it rain. To that end, the police were presumably just stopping a child of God from enjoying his inheritance. As expected, that argument fell on deaf ears by those unrepentant heathens, and John was arrested and charged. As it turns out, our criminal was out of work and owed a lot of money to the federal government. That was what inspired him to seek out his Jesus money. John Haskew might not be a billionaire in heavenly terms, but he's good at experiments. He figured out how to set up wire transfers himself and then used a banking routing number that didn't belong to him to wire the cash from a large financial institution to an unidentified account. Unfortunately for John, he doesn't have heavenly immunity. He has now been arrested and has been charged with making fraudulent statements to a department or agency of the U.S. He now faces 5 years in prison. The court also wouldn't allow him to pay his debts with thoughts and prayers either. What's this country coming to? Number 4. The Cursed Jewels. John Lee was accused of scamming someone out of over $90 million in jewelry. In total, John Lee got about 17 stolen gems through his fraud, including a 20-carat pink diamond. The million-dollar question is, how did John Lee get people to send him so much jewelry? Lee had an account on a platform called Purple Gardens. You're probably thinking, ooh, eggplant farming. Finally, a website that understands me. Unfortunately, Purple Gardens is actually a platform for psychics to provide video readings on relationships, careers, and other aspects of life. Eggplant farming would be far more useful. Lee had an account on this platform and sold himself on the app as a psychic. During his time not growing eggplants, Lee connected with someone who needed his services. He became their confidant and started communicating with them outside the app. Lee first started requesting money from this client, and the money was happily sent. Since each request was promptly granted, Lee moved on to even more ridiculous requests. He told his client to send him jewelry so that he could cleanse it of bad spirits. Bad spirits just love expensive jewelry. So the victim sent their jewelry, and Lee said that he performed cleansing rituals on it. To show that he wasn't a fraud, he sent the jewelry back. However, the victim continued to experience bad feelings that Lee said he'd cleansed from the jewelry. When they informed Lee of these bad feelings, Lee told them that the bad feelings must be caused by their boss's jewelry and that he needed to cleanse them too, obviously. Cleansing the boss's jewels would solve the problem once and for all. But here's the thing. The victim's boss had no idea who Lee was and wasn't going to send their jewelry to a stranger on the internet. This attitude is a little poor for potentially bad spirit-infested jewels. The victim, aware of this, but still wanting to be Employee of the Month, did the next best thing. They stole the jewelry in question and sent them to Lee. They went into their boss's safe 3 separate times and stole as many gems as they could. They stole so much that they were caught on video exiting their boss's office with stuffed pockets looking like a cartoon character. They were clearly dedicated to ending the bad spirit menace plaguing themselves and their boss. When Lee got the diamonds, he promised to return them after cleansing. However, that turned out to be a lie. We're all shocked. Instead of returning the jewelry, he simply ghosted the victim. When they asked about the jewelry again, Lee told them that he had no idea what they were talking about and would advise them to consult a psychiatrist. This, of course, is a proper example of gaslighting. Once the diamonds got into John Lee's hands, he found a way to sell them to a jeweler jeweler for about $41 million. Some of the diamonds got into the hands of a jeweler named Zaki Salami. Salami wanted to auction the diamonds off and also wanted to shape some of them into a pendant. Throughout this period, the police were already searching for the diamonds. Salami wanted to auction them at Christie's, a big shot auction shop for jewelry. Unfortunately for Salami and his accomplices, he couldn't auction the diamonds off on time. The police promptly caught up with him and the diamonds were seized. But that wasn't the end of Salami's problems. He had bought a 1/4 stake in the diamonds for about $3.8 million. His plan was to recoup his capital from the auction. Right now, it doesn't seem like Salami would be getting his money back since the partners that sold the diamonds to him have offered no refunds. John Lee, on the other hand, was arrested by the police. He currently faces mail and wire fraud charges. These charges carry a 20-year sentence each. Maybe he'll cleanse the prisons of bad spirits if he gets in there. Number 3. Misfortune Teller. A gypsy healer and psychic who goes by the name Sherry Tina Jovanovich has been sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for conning a depressed woman out of $1.6 million over 7 years. Sherry grew up in an environment where young gypsy women were supposed to work as fortune tellers for men, and that was exactly what she did when she met her victim at an airport back in 2007. At the time, Sherry was just 17 years old and her victim was 27. Sherry gained her victim's confidence and convinced her to start seeing fortune tellers. At the time of their meeting, Sherry's victim was grieving the loss of her mother and was battling depression. Over the next 7 years, Sherry would scam her victims out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even after Sherry moved away from the area, she continued to convince her victim to send payments. These payments were collected to purchase crystals and other spiritual materials that would cleanse Sherry's victim of bad luck and ill fortune. When her victim got her inheritance from her father, Sherry was there to collect it all as well. She explained that there was a curse over her family, and that curse needed to be lifted, with the aid of thousands of dollars, of course. Curses are a menace, and they can apparently be expensive. The scheme unraveled when Sherry finally confessed to her victim that there was no curse. She also promised to pay back the money she had gotten over the years, but that never happened. This led the victim to contact a private investigator, who then reported Sherry to the authorities. The authorities moved swiftly, and Sherry was arrested and charged. In court, it was revealed that she had suffered from schizophrenia previously, and also had another criminal conviction. The judge was pretty incensed when he heard about Sherry's cunning and decided to hand down a judgment at the upper reaches of the sentencing guidelines range. At least she didn't turn anyone into a doll or something. Number 2. The 30-year scam. David Hall, a university finance official, stole over 2 million euros over 3 decades by exploiting his trusted position. Ultimately, it was a garden variety audit that discovered just how much Hall had stolen from the university. The audit found huge holes in the balance sheet that Hall had hidden for over 30 years. Once the hole in the balance sheet was discovered, the police were invited to arrest Hall and charge him in court. The amazing thing about this case was that Hall confessed immediately after he was confronted with the facts of the matter. He didn't try to hide his culpability at all. That's very strange behavior coming from someone who was able to hide his scam for 30 years. It's so suspicious that it wouldn't be all that crazy to assume that Hall just wanted to get caught. At the time he was arrested, he was about 64 and was very close to retirement. Maybe he grew a conscience as well? Number 1. Gold chain switcheroo. Tony Peach is a respected jeweler who's been in the business for years, but he was still scammed by a professional con artist who sold him worthless trinkets for 6,000 euros. The con Mr. Peach suffered was a pretty basic one. The scammer came into the shop, gave Mr. Peach authentic gold chains and asked to sell them. Mr. Peach tested the chains with acid, found out that they were the real deal, and offered 6,000 euros for it. The trickster then collected the authentic chains, asked to call his mother, and turned around. By the time he turned back, he had pulled a switcheroo with chains for worthless trinkets of the same weight. For Mr. Peach, it was the worst kind of a-roo. He paid the 6,000 euros as agreed, and the scammer handed over the chain in a gauze bag. It was only after the trickster was gone that Mr. Peach realized there was a switcheroo. Ultimately, Mr. Peach blames himself. The trick was so obvious and so simple that he couldn't believe he didn't see it coming. He's still certain the scammer is pulling the same tricks elsewhere, and he still wants him caught. So much so that Peach placed a $10,000 reward for anyone who has any information that leads to an arrest. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section what you'd rather do. Have to run 5 miles every day for a year, or be a vegetarian for a year.